And welcome to Talk Story, Maui's longest talk show for 30 years now. I've been talking and talking and talking. And I've only lost my voice once. And I am so happy to have Anne Randolph on the phone. We were chatting here a minute or two before we went on the air, and I'm learning just in the few minutes we've already spoken. Welcome, Anne. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk to you, and I think we're so lucky to be able to see you this Friday, April 12th, at the historic Makawao Union Church, which is a beautiful church. You're going to love it. It's over 100 years old. It's a lovely place.
Yes, I did a sound check there last week. I was over there, and I thought, oh, my God, this space in here is just beautiful. And the sound, it's like you can hear a pin drop. It's great.
Yes, absolutely. There's been some beautiful concerts in there and many things. Ram Dass has done many chants and things in there, so it's got quite an interesting history. But so do you. We were just talking about when you got started, when you were in high school and getting out of high school in your first job, and I think it's fascinating how you began writing. It's just a really interesting perspective and turn of events. So let's go back to the beginning and when you started writing and what it was like.
Well, first of all, Carol Burnett was my hero, and then Gilda Radner. So I was attracted to wild characters and oddballs. And I was a class clown in high school. And then when I got out of high school, I knew I wanted to get on Saturday Night Live. That was like my goal. But I didn't have money to go to college or at least anything. I had to find a job. And I saw the movie The King of Hearts, which was a film about these mentally ill patients living in the south of France in World War I, and they take over the town. They release themselves out of the asylum, and that asylum becomes incredibly creative, and I mean the town does because. And I think, well, I'd like to get a job at a mental hospital. That's where all the fun is. I mean, that's what I thought from the movie. This is where the creative people are. And I found out there was one next to our campus. I was going to Ohio University, and so I went up there and I said, do you have any jobs here? And they go, no, but we let 6 students a semester live here studying psychology. And I go, well, I'm not studying psychology, but I could write plays with the patients. And I had never done anything like this in my life, and I practically threw myself at his feet, and he said, I've never seen someone so passionate to move into mental institutions.
Did they give you a room right there?
They gave me a room. My room had bars on it.
Oh,
and
no.
I had one of those old tubs where they used to do hydrotherapy.
Oh, no.
It was built at the turn of the century. It used to hold 3,000 people, and now it only held 300. So all these abandoned corridors I used to roller skate in at nighttime. And, I mean, it was like one of those eerie, Gothic asylums.
Wow. I have to ask, didn't you have parents that began to wonder what you were doing?
This is really interesting. My parents were so happy that I got a job because, and then I could afford to go to college. I mean, they were like, yeah. So, other kids are getting dropped off at the dorm, and they're happy to drop me off at the deluxe schizophrenic unit. So
coming in fresh. Maybe this is where you developed your sense of humor. Coming in fresh and trying to write plays for people in the asylum. Did you ever wonder what they could and couldn't do, or try to keep it very simple? Or how did you write for people who had mental difficulties?
Well, these are, some were dual diagnosed, developmentally disabled, and mentally ill. Well, I just would meet people kind of where they were, and we would write them together. So if this person, I remember one guy, I don't know how to this day did, he smoked cigarettes, and when he smoked a cigarette, the smoke would come out his eardrums. I'm like, what? And so I built a part where he could do that, and it looked quite inappropriate, but he loved it, being able to showcase that talent, because whenever I, visit the unit, that's what he loved to show me. So I just worked with people where they were, and some of their, I just created characters based on a little bit of their personality and let them write their own lines. And then some I actually wrote lines that were completely opposite, like that embodied cowboys or characters so far removed from themselves, and it got them out of their shell.
Wow. So they were able to play another whole role. It'd be kind of very interesting if you had a person who had multiple character disabilities where they thought there were 5 or 6 people in one person, and then they could play all those different roles, right?
Yeah, that could be. Mostly it was chronic schizophrenic population who tend not to even interact. But if you give them lines and a role, I found that it really helps them, actually.
Wow, how interesting.
Really cool.
Do you ever go back and look at those old plays you wrote and wonder about them and see if you could use them for anything?
No, but I know every character I've created has been influenced directly by living there.
Wow. Well, let's move on to when you decided to do plays for Broadway. Did you specifically want to do a play for Broadway, or were you just looking to do plays and then you shopped them around?
No, my trajectory was to get on Saturday Night Live, so I was very interested in creating over-the-top characters. And then somewhere along the line, I had done a one-person show for the first time in my life, and I thought, Saturday Night Live is only about comedy, and I felt like I wanted to capture the whole human condition. Life is just not funny. I wanted to get the pathos. I wanted to get it all. And so I started writing solo shows, and then my goal became to get like an hour-long TV show and all that. And then later, it was just like a slow unraveling of what really is my truth. Like I go this direction. And really when I just honored my whole being as a comedic storyteller, and that I love being on stage more than anything else, that's when Mel Brooks appeared on the scene. It's like I got very clear with my vision. I think before I was like, I want a TV show, or I want a movie, or I want this, or I want that. And really what I loved was the interplay between audience and myself. And that we're all one. That beautiful dialogue that happens on stage, the energy exchange. There's nothing like it.
And Mel Brooks is... I've always loved his sense of humor. I mean, talk about a guy that's got amazing, to the limits and beyond, he's such a brilliant, brilliant man. And he gave you a great quote. He says, she's a genius. Well, that's a nice thing. So what happened when, first of all, did you meet Mel Brooks? And I know he was in L.A. and in New York. Did you meet him in New York?
Yeah, he was in L.A. and New York. Well, at this time, like any performer trying to get there, you have other jobs. I had 20 zillion jobs. And one of the jobs I had, 10 years I've been working the graveyard shift at a homeless shelter for mentally ill women, minimum wage, nighttime, as I'm winning awards for Best Solo Show, but I'm funding my shows by my minimum wage job, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the way of an artist. And then one night, Mel Brooks shows up at my show. And
wow.
He goes, this show's going to New York, and I'm going to produce it. And he and Anne Bancroft then kind of took me from obscurity, and I worked with him for a year, where he really helped me shape my material, and Anne Bancroft helped me become a much better actress. And then we opened in New York in 2004, and then pretty much I've been making my living touring and teaching since then.
That's amazing. What an amazing gift but you paid your dues. It's important for anyone starting, realize you got to pay your dues, and you paid your dues,
Oh yeah, I think I didn't, that was when I was in my 40s that I finally was able to make my living. So you're talking your 20s, 30s. I worked 50 hours a week at the shelter, and that was the basis of my show that took me to New York. So the work experience, the show that took me to New York was the show about me working the graveyard shift at a homeless shelter.
And how much comedy was involved in that? What was it, mostly all comedy at that point, since that was where you were going with SNL?
Well, there's a lot of comedy in all the shows, but there's also a lot of pathos. So I always like the quote. I've been working with Alanis Morissette recently, and she uses the quote, I laughed, I cried, I spit up my drink, I had my ego obliterated. And when she talks about seeing my shows, and that just really makes me happy, because I think that's what happens. People have this experience. So.
Well, that sounds, what she's saying is like a kind of Zen moment, right? Of where you get to that point where it all becomes like an amazing joke on life, right? Or life's joke on you. And you just kind of get beyond everything. And so from there, you moved on. And where do you go after? Of course, the second show sometimes is the hardest, right? Because you've already done this.
I've written 6 solo shows.
Yeah, but after this big one with Mel Brooks, did you have sometimes people after the big opening have a hard time coming up with the next show that's as popular, right?
No, because I had after that show, the reason being there was a lot of loss around that show. And that's discussed and shared in Inappropriate in all the right ways. There was I had tremendous amount of loss right after that show. And that grief took me down a dark hole, and that way that I wrote through that grief was writing another show, and that show was better than the show that I had in New York with Mel. It was I think grief just ripped me open to a new layer.
And you were able was that the point where you were able to take your loss and grief and try to make it not just someone talking about it, but someone expressing it on a one-to-one or audience to you basis where you actually connected?
Well, that's a great question. I think what that grief did was that I knew that writing had saved my life over and over again in situations, and I got this idea when I did Loveland. That was the name of the show on grief. I was doing 8 shows a week in Washington, D.C. at the Arena Stage, this beautiful theater, and I said, well, what if I invite the audience to stay after the show, and we do like a half-an-hour writing workshop on grief and loss and death? And the arena agreed. I didn't know if any audience members would stay, and it was so amazing to do a comedy show on death, and then to also have people writing and crying and expressing grief. So it was that was like my next step as an artist, I think, was involving the audience to be able to take the stage if they want to. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, it must have been cathartic on many levels, because, that's one of the old Buddhist sayings, as Buddha said, someone came to him and was really upset about having the loss of their child, and he said, here's what can I do? And Buddha said, go to the village, knock on every door, and see if there's anyone there that hasn't expressed that kind of loss, And so when you start seeing that everyone has experienced it in all different ways, then you begin to kind of look at it in a different perspective, and probably true for the people who participated in it too.
Yes, yeah, it was really profound. I mean, we're all sharing our losses after going to a theater thinking, I'm just going out tonight to the theater.
You trick them.
I like tricking people.
I can tell you like tricking people. Absolutely. And in this, it's interesting how you evolved into that point. It's funny because I did a CD called A Rise Above Abuse, which I came out about how many times there have been women who've been abused. And that was the first CD I actually talked about my own experience, but I really always wanted to take it out on the road and let people who have been abused talk about this on stage, because 1 in 4 1 in 4 people have been abused, women have been abused, and 1 in 5 raped, but so many people have kept quiet about it. Now, of course, since I did that CD about 4 years ago, there's a lot that's come out, but I've always thought, what if people really could find a safe place, or kind of in that umbrella of comedy, or other people are experiencing the same thing, speak about it, because these are important things. I mean, that's life-changing stuff you're doing, Anne.
Oh, thank you.
No, absolutely.
Sounds like you are too, in writing about, telling your own story around the abuse.
Well, and there's so many who have, right? And you begin to see. I mean, I started to be able to see who, when I looked at a person, I could almost tell if they had been. Did you start to see in other people and start to realize other people who had been keeping things quiet, their pain quiet, and kept it inside? Because you do workshops as well as involving the audience in your entire theatrical. It's not. I don't know. You don't even call it performance. Do you call it a performance?
Yeah, I call it. But yeah, there's the performance for sure, it's entertainment, and then there's the workshops, which I think are wildly entertaining too. But
well, they usually sell out, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah, the one here, you're here this Friday. If people are just tuning in, I'm talking to Anne Randolph, and she's going to be talking interacting and doing Inappropriate in all the right ways this Friday at the historic Makawao Union Church. But there was a workshop, and the workshop sold out, and I can see why, because you help people write as well, don't you?
Yes, I have people write and express those things that the deepest thing you're trying to hide is the very gold that you want to put out there, for sure. So encouraging, giving people permission, and I think the show gives people permission, because, oh my God, I let it all hang out. So I think I like having the combination because the show actually sets the stage for people who will say, well, if she went there, I certainly can go there.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that combination.
I think it's contagious. Absolutely. I really believe that. So what made you leave New York, the major cities, and take your show on the road?
Well, I wanted to get, first of all, right after New York, my dad was dying, and my mother had a stroke. So I pretty much stopped and went back there and was with them. And Anne Bancroft, I was supposed to begin the movie based on the Broadway show, and she died. And so the movie that we're going to go, so there was a tremendous amount of loss there. And then I took that show that I had done, and then I was invited to San Francisco to do it. And then I got the idea, let's go everywhere. Let's just take this, I called it the Good Grief Tour. I just wanted to go to all the different cities and perform this grief tour. And that was, I just got this idea.
Wasn't that Snoopy's line?
Yeah, Good Grief.
I see. It was when you said Good Grief, I saw this little cartoon pop in my mind, which is, and it's an interesting way of putting it. It's a very interesting way of sharing it. So when you wrote Inappropriate, did you write Inappropriate always, or do you improvise a lot? Do you find yourself improvising?
Well, this is interesting. I've written every other show down to the syllable. Like, there's not any wiggle room whatsoever. Not that I'm not playing within that wiggle room, but Inappropriate, first of all, that title came from the Washington Post.
Yeah.
The headline review for my show, Loveland, the headline saying Anne Randolph is inappropriate in all the right ways. And I said, well, that is a great title. I'm going to call my next show that.
Well, and it is, there's no all the right ways anymore. It was like so much what was inappropriate, but there's been so many barriers and walls broken down since politically correct or politically incorrect, and we're still breaking down what's correct and inappropriate and what's appropriate anymore. So what are the lines of inappropriate anymore? Do you find those inappropriate lines changing?
Oh, definitely. Oh, I've had, like on the West Coast, like I teach at Esalen, I teach at Hollyhock, I teach at these mind, body, spirit centers, and they I'm paid to perform, and they promote the show, and then there'll be a mind, body, spirit center that I used to perform at a lot on the East Coast, and they're like, no, you can't perform that show anymore because you trigger people. So it's fascinating.
You're kidding? So it's gone backwards?
It's gone backwards.
I thought it was going to go forward. I never would have guessed it's gone backward. Well, yeah, I guess people are. Yeah, I can see that now as you're saying it. I can imagine. Because there's more and more people getting sensitive about things. That's for sure.
Oh, no, it's out of control. Like Jerry Seinfeld and different comedians now, they're not allowed on campus. They won't go on campus because colleges now, nope, you can't say anything that would be possibly offensive to any sort of population group. So comics now, you used to be able to go to colleges. Nope. You can only go to colleges almost if you're doing like the most PG, non-offensive. Well, look at the Academy Awards and the Golden Globes.
And I'm even afraid to go there because people are, it's like all of a sudden I'm thinking things. I'm going, should I say that? It's like, I can see what you're saying. But I'd never really put that hat on it before, which is kind of interesting. And I'd never could guess Jerry Seinfeld couldn't go to talking to college. I never would have guessed that. That's like mind-blowing to me. And
well, yeah.
So you don't do colleges, huh?
No, I don't do colleges.
Wow.
And I also won't go under. I've had theaters where, I remember with Squeezebox, the one Mel Brooks produced in New York. So before I was at a theater, a very reputable theater in the Midwest, and they would not produce it because it was inappropriate. But the minute Mel Brooks put a stamp of approval on it, they're like, oh, yeah, we want you back, because this New York legitimized it. But then at the same time, they were the same ones with Vagina Monologues. They would not, or Mapplethorpe's exhibition, they banned the billboard. There's all kind of, people are sensitive.
But not in Europe as much, are they still? It's a more American thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm definitely not going to ever censor myself. So
no, and then you
my
shouldn't.
whole thing is help people liberate their voices, speak the truth, and if it's inappropriate, that's your truth. Let it come out.
So the Kathy Griffin thing, when that happened, it was kind of a sign of the times, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Kathy Griffin thing. I mean, that had many different factors. The Kathy Griffin thing. So, yeah.
But
many moving parts to that.
Definitely. Well, I mean, you got me very curious, and I am amazed. There's still a few tickets left. As you were there at the Makawao Union Church, there's not a lot of seats. It's really an intimate, great place to do what you're doing, and I really recommend that people get tickets right away. I really do, because this is going to be a great night, and a lot of laughs and a lot of insight and a lot of interaction, things you don't get to see too often. And I'm really glad you came to. Coming to Maui because you're in Kauai.
I want to thank my producer, Fred Spaniard, who's bringing me over here.
Thank you, Fred. Yeah, absolutely. Global Media Productions. You can call that number for tickets, 283-5365, 283-5365, 283-5365, just in case you're driving and you have to remember it because you don't want to write it down, 283-5365. And I really, I'm very curious to see your show and get inspired by what you're doing. And I really thank you for coming in and bringing your particular perspective on what's inappropriate in all the right ways to Maui. Thank you. Thank you for having me. This has been lovely. Yeah, love talking to you. Love talking to you. Yeah. We'll see you Friday. Thanks for calling in. Okay. All right. Okay. Bye-bye.